All right, everybody, welcome. Time is 6:30. I'll go ahead and open up the formal city council study session and call it to order. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the back wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call for the formal city council study session.
Six members are present, Mayor.
Okay, our item on the agenda tonight is to hold discussion on the proposed 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2026 and 2027 budget. We'll have a presentation from Jen Knabb, our finance director.
City Council, we wanted to present to you a rough draft of our 5-year capital improvement plan. And we want to make sure that we are fully transparent, that we are, we've got goals of being fiscally responsible, aligning with all of our state laws and our responsibilities. We've gathered inputs from staff and developed an early prioritization. The I'm gonna call it salmon color column shows A, B, and C, which are prioritized by staff or from prior budgets on A, required, B, necessary, or C, discretionary. The staff contributed their inputs at the beginning of May. We're now in July. We've compiled everything and gone through, but between now and really May, when they turned it in the end of the fiscal, we do understand that there's some things that are in the FY25 estimate that may shift out. There's other things that are in FY26 that we may be able to get done in FY25. So you will see shifts between the years, just based on the availability of materials and resources and our own capacity. We're also still working on identifying funding sources. So you'll see that some of them in the green have funding sources. They may not be correct. There's many on there that don't have a funding source yet. However, the list of all of the projects we wanted to present to you now, the priorities, and we are building up revenues. And once we evaluate how revenues match expenditures, we'll then need to come back to talk about project affordability and what we can afford to do based on our priorities and what revenues we have coming into the city. We want the budget to reflect our needs and financial sustainability. For the city side of the house, these projects work to maintain and improve public infrastructure, support growth and development, ensure our fiscal responsibility and long-term planning, enhance our quality of life, improve our resilience and sustainability, meet our regulatory requirements, promote transparency, and leverage all of the funding opportunities that we have. On the utility side, we want to ensure reliable and safe service delivery. We're replacing aging infrastructure. We are working to meet regulatory and environmental standards. We are expanding capacity for future demand or evaluating it. We're working to control long-term operating costs, improve asset management and risk mitigation, promote resiliency and climate adaptation, and then support financial planning and rate stability. So as we go through, those are the themes that you're going to see within these projects. On page 5 of the agenda here, kick off with the city projects. And I'll just call out a couple of the bigger items on these pages. Under public safety, on page 5, we've got the fire station forecast out. We have safety vehicles and equipment replacements. And then on page 6, you'll see our law enforcement center. You'll also see under animal control, our line item there for the Humane Society. Scrolling down on page 8, where we've got Parks and Rec, that's where you'll see the amphitheater at John C. Fremont. You'll see park restroom upgrades and the streetscapes projects. Those are the big items. And scrolling down then to page 10, under the street fund, you'll see the multi-use building highlighted there in yellow. And on page, really throughout this entire CIP, you'll see amounts in there for all of the insurance repairs from the recent storms. Particularly parks had quite a bit of damage. So you'll see that there as well. We've already received those funds, but, and as you know, we brought to council and we've hired someone to help us manage those repairs, which we're working to try and get done by next May within the 2-year timeline that insurance gives us. Then still on 10 and 11, under street improvements, that's where you'll see the various street reconstructions, signal repairs, the Broad Street Viaduct and sidewalks for the ADA improvements that we do every year. And then following transit then is on page 12. The airport projects are on 13. And then we've got E911 on 14 and special projects on 15. On the utility side of the house, we've got a number of projects, many of which you'll see RB, and those are those that were identified for revenue bonds that we had a resolution that already came to council. Electric production on pages 16 and 17, you'll see the EPA effluent limitation guidelines, or ELG implementation. Also on 16, we're reviewing our generator options and the turbine generator overhaul. And then electric distribution is on 17 and 18. And that's where you see the substation transformers and transmission lines. And being as fiscally responsible as we can, we're so pleased that that we've been awarded the $1.9 million for the Nebraska Grid Resilience Grant Project. And you'll see that project on page 18, which I believe is on the agenda for this evening. You'll hear more about. On page 19 to 21, we have water and wastewater. Some of the big projects there, you'll see the horizontal well. I do also want to point out that we're working through the lead line replacement program, which is that partially forgivable zero interest loan with some federal funding. And those we're working through with them on the phasing. So that will get added to this, but you're not going to see it there today. On gas, then on page 22, you'll see the projects around natural gas line extension and capacity increases. And then finishing off on these pages, you've got warehouse on page 23, utility locating there, also on 23. Then you have IT planned spend on 24. You've got a building section there on 24, and then fleet on page 25. And I know I went through it fast, but I do want to spend the majority of the time leaving it open to questions and from yourselves or from the public. We know there's still work to do here, but we wanted to show you as soon as possible what the priorities are. I do think that when we add up everything and we look at all the revenues that we've got planned coming in, we're not going to have a bunch of room here to add more stuff. It's going to be more about prioritizing. And so, do pay attention to the A's, B's, and C's, and so that we can make sure that we get a budget that reflects what we want to do as a city. And
Questions?
Yeah.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer. This is very helpful. Not as much of a question as it is a comment, and this is directed at all staff and at all the rest of the city council. This is a lot to take in, and I think we've got to understand it. I think we need to really study it and talk about it, and I just would like to float the idea of maybe breaking it down, maybe 3 parts, and then having additional study sessions I don't know about everybody else. I would be willing to come in on alternate Tuesdays to discuss this some more, just so I can better understand it. I don't have any issues on any of this stuff. A few of the price tags are a little sticker shock, if you will, when you look at them, but I don't understand the projects, and that's one of the things I would like to understand better. So I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Councilwoman Ganem?
Actually, I agree certainly with my colleague, but I do want a couple clarifications, just going forward. I just wanted to know, just for clarification, who assigns the priority designation to these items?
So for this initial draft, all of the department heads put forth their capital projects and took a stab at prioritization. And some of them, though, I think carried over from prior capital improvement plans as well. And I, also want to leave it open to, as we put stuff together, this isn't perfect yet. It's a rough draft here in July before we finalize in September.
Okay, and how do we change a priority if it needs to be, or we would question that? Would that be through amendment? Maybe that's a legal question.
Well, this is just a draft.
Yes, I know.
So, it's open for discussion, and then, the staff has gone through with their departments saying, hey, this is required. We really need this for the city to run for whatever reason. And then they've got the necessary items. So, certainly if there's particular items that you want to question or call out, we can take those away and get back to you on them, or have the department head reach out, or myself.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll have more in a little bit. I did notice that some things were not included in this capital that had been included in previous budgets and capital development. And I was looking in particular at the flooding that happens on Railroad and Claremore. We have always had an amount in there, and that's been taken out. And it's been there the last 2 budget cycles, but we haven't come to an option yet, and the option may or may not cost as much as that had been tagged in there before. How would we request that be added in? Would that be some individual discussions?
Well, certainly we'll write it down right now and go take a look at what was in there before, and then we can get back to you on that.
Because some of the options may cost money, and then that leaves us a place card in it if it's included. If it's not included, we're going to say, sorry, there's no money.
Yeah, and you said that was Claremore.
Yes, the flooding that happens along that, and Jody may, or our city administrator may want to address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Jody Sanders, City Administrator. So on page 7, under the street improvement projects, about the middle of the page, you'll see right now it's a single line there. This is the conversation that has been had multiple times about flooding that happens along South Claremore Avenue and leading into Railroad. I believe that too is an avenue. Those two, the conversation had been that the city would pave the road and put a storm sewer underneath the road to alleviate the flooding that happens to the properties that are on the west side of the street. Though it impacts essentially two individuals, a business, and then a private resident. It's a hobby garage that we're talking about there. As has been talked about repeatedly, the attempts that have been made, it looked like a simple thing. The more we got to looking at it, the price tag to pave that street would be spending more than $1 million for 2 properties. And so what you see in this is a proposal to perhaps purchase the two properties that continue to flood out and create a detention cell, so that we no longer have those two individuals having problems with flooding, and alleviate perhaps flooding for others that are down there. If you've driven along there, it's a dead end gravel road that comes to a corner. And we've tried dredging out the ditch that is along that gravel road. And we can only go so far because there's a gas line right underneath where that ditch would be otherwise. So it hasn't been forgotten. That's where it is within the capital plan.
So we're planning to meet as a group with the individuals impacted, or were they
If that-
informed already?
They've not been informed yet. That's a conversation that we'll need to have. If, you know, in the past, I personally have talked to one of the owners. The other owner, I understand others have, and there's not been a feeling, a willingness to sell their property for whatever reason. But short of purchasing the property and creating a detention cell, basically we're kind of at wit's end as to how to alleviate the problem and again, we're spending a fair amount of money on 2 residents for a town of 27,000 folks.
Okay. Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, Jen, just a couple of general questions. I've still trying to get my head around the reserves. Just in gross numbers, do we have a target for reserve funds within the city? I'm sure we do, but I'm trying to understand where we want to be with reserves. We've talked about spending them down. How are we doing on that? Where are we on reserves? Or just trying to understand that whole picture.
We're still going through the revenue side of the house, and the step that we're on is to look at all the capital improvement plans, get all these projects in, and then we're running all of the revenue models as well. And then we will apply funding sources here, which will then determine what reserves we're going to be using and not using. Obviously, there's some that have already been earmarked as reserves because they were on the last capital
But I
improvement
would
plan.
assume we probably have targets for what we need to maintain for reserves, what we have available yet to spend down for reserves. Can you just in broad terms, can you give us an idea where we are?
So on the city side, because the plans for the police station and the fire station, which is to use reserves, our balance of reserves is still well above what's required by city ordinance. And then until we decide what of these other projects we're going to be using reserves for, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question until we can finish the math.
Well, I
guess.
think part of it was my confusion because as I looked at this, and I may have been misreading it, it looked to me like we were going to be bonding most of our public safety instead of using reserves. It looked like we were even going to be using reserves for Broad Street, where we would be reimbursed for the expense.
So again, and you might have missed that at the beginning of the intro, we have not gone through and finished all the funding sources on these. So right now it's just about what are our projects that we want to spend money on and,
Okay.
and the priorities. And then when we agree that, we'll be going through based on, sales tax 55 can only be used for certain things and 56 and applying, but the intention is still to use the reserves that were allotted for the fire station and for the police station.
Okay, so
and
for right now, just kind of ignore the funding
please,
sources.
Yes,
Okay, that
yes,
helps.
yes.
One more question, 950,000 on Humane Society. Can you get, how, or maybe I need to ask somebody else, just curious what that's going to go for.
I was not involved necessarily in the development of that particular number, but I do know that we've been meeting with Forever Homes and have been working with some architects at JEO, looking at what would it cost, and they're working on getting us a square footage amount. Did we get that, Jennifer?
I have not received it.
Okay.
But
So-
basically just looking at long-term.
Right, well, and that's
Possibilities.
right. So what is it? Is it gonna be better to get the inside of it and rebuild inside that shell? Are we better served? And is the public better served if we go ahead and spend the money and basically start over and design something that maybe is more energy efficient and better
Okay.
use of space and that kind of thing? So
Fair enough.
it really, for this exercise and purpose, it's more of a placeholders, kind of setting it
Right.
out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council at this time? I would just like to thank you for coming so early with this and giving us as elected officials the ability to look through all the projects. I think, Blair is on, right on. I mean, it's a lot to take in when you look at each, individual department. I want to thank all the departments that showed up tonight I know the time and the effort that you put into these, and you're also looking out 2 years, and that's tough to do, but also it's really important to have a good budgeting process. I mean, to do this early, to understand your departments, what your needs are, and it helps us as elected officials make the best decisions for the community. So I just want to thank you for the work that was put into this as a team. And we've talked a lot about the city, but the utility, there's a lot going on in that utility budget as well as we look at the next 2 years. Talked about the bond that we approved, all those projects, the horizontal well. Obviously, we're trying to add generation to the system, the resiliency grant. There's a lot of moving parts. But I mean, the budget speaks to what we're doing as a city. It's obviously, to me, the most important document we do. And I appreciate the time at the front end that you're doing right now to do the best we can with it. So.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I would encourage council members to go through, ask questions as you go along. Oftentimes, if you have a question, one of your fellow council members also have that question. We will do the best that we can to get the answers back to you ahead of time, but that would also be something that we could incorporate based on what your initiatives are, what is important to you and your constituents. Then when we come back with a more solid draft of this, we would be able to talk about, the questions that were asked and kind of fill in the blanks, because again, if you have those questions, the public probably does too. And I'd ask you to include me as a copy if you choose to reach out directly to a department head. If you copy me as well, so we can kind of gauge where the questions are coming and what we need to address for you. Thank
Can
you.
you just, briefly talk about the schedule of the budget, so we could maybe have that, if you have that, as we get ready for the next couple months, what
Yeah.
that looks like?
I didn't bring it.
Okay.
It's on my wall upstairs. I apologize, but
But maybe
it-
just in general.
yeah,
what-
in general, so we've met with each department head. We've gone through both their capital improvement plan and also their operating requests. Again, we're still building up revenue side of the house, and we're now working through also payroll estimates, which payroll is a large cost for the city. And so we're working to try and get those together. We will then in August 20th-ish, we'll get evaluation on the city, which then determines how much we can grow from prior year. And we start filling out those the budget worksheets, and there's new regulations as far as is how much we can grow versus the postcard. And then any exceptions if we so choose. And it's important that we're gonna make sure that everybody understand what it means to have an exception and the benefit and the danger of them on your budgets and what it means for future years. Then we will come back and at the end of August and beginning of September, multiple times then for all the different readings. And we'll also have a public hearing. And then the budget is due then by September 20th into the state. And so it's a bit of a race, even though it's July, it's a tremendous amount of work between now and then. And, you know, we need to make sure that our revenues equals our expenditures. We need to make sure that we are all the different types of revenue, which can only be used for certain things, that we are making sure that we have the appropriation. You know, we had a tremendous amount of insurance damage, and that's millions of dollars. And so we need to have that appropriation in there so we can do that work. And so I hope that answers your question. That's a bit of the flow of what we can expect in the next couple of months. Jody, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add with.
Got it covered.
All right, I don't see any other, oh, Councilwoman Gannon, go ahead.
I'll come back with my other comment then though too is question. I just want to reiterate how important it would be for us to meet and have these smaller as Councilman Horner issued. I think we really need to do that. I'm looking at some of the items and some of it I look at as a wish list for some of the departments. And one would be like the $65 million indoor turf building that we want to put, and it's actually listed for city dollars to pay for that down the line, not for about 3 years. But I know if we don't approve it, then you can't make applications for grants and try to look for other funds to come in for that, because that is 130 years of road repair. Or if you take all our income, our taxes for the next 10 years, we could pay for that. But that would be hard to accept at this point when we have so many needs over wants. And I view this as a want over a need. So, thank you.
Councilman Von Baron.
Probably just along the same line. I was just picking up on Councilman Horner's suggestion. I don't think, you know, it's not necessary to tie up the entire staff, but if we could have a couple sessions where we maybe just break it up with a third of the departments or whatever, just to do a Q&A, I think it'd be very helpful.
Any final comments from the council? Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East 5th Street. Appreciate the opportunity to see firsthand some of the things that are going into this year's budget. Especially wanted to thank right off the top, Councilman Horner's suggestion that more meetings are necessary. Councilman Ganem echoes, and so does Councilman, excuse me, Von Baron. We did the same thing when I was on council. We had to have multiple sessions on the alternate days. We've had to have special meetings to do this in order to dig in, just as you said, a lot of detail. Want to understand it before you vote on it. It's critical that that happens. So I applaud you for doing that. Obviously, looking through this for the first time myself, if I was in your shoes, I'd have plenty of questions already to ask. I've got a couple of pages for them already. Won't bring them up tonight, but some of the things that are related to my concerns had to do with the use of reserves and the level of reserves that are being consumed and what they're being consumed for. So I'll be anxious to see the next round of when that information is more certain as to how you intend to fund some of these projects, and especially those that are being funded out of city reserves. Would like to speak a little bit to the project that Councilman Ganem brought up, the South Claremore Railroad project. That project has been in the budget twice while I was on council. I think it started out at $1 million. It may have grown to $1.5 million or $1.8 million. That project hasn't been done. And quite honestly, it affects more than 2 property owners. Yes, it affects the Hasselbrooks, and yes, it affects Albee Towing. If you want to build a street there, that street would be used by a lot more than those 2 properties. Because today that's being used by the grain company, it's being used by structural components, it's being used with what used to be the sports barn and all those down Railroad Street. So to think that this is a 2-person project is, I think, a misstatement. The question is, should it be done? If you lived in these properties or had a business in these areas and every time it rained a couple inches at a fast pace, you were sweeping water out of your facilities on a regular basis, you'd be upset the city hasn't reacted to this. The city needs to do something about this. One of the suggestions that I offered, it hasn't really gone anywhere, but if we're looking for Plan C, because this is too expensive, don't build the street. Use the street, South Claremore, or portions of it, and Railroad Street as the water detention area. This whole problem started because you allowed structural components to elevate their property. That's how this all got started. And it's been getting worse and worse ever since. So the cure requires all of those players to participate. The street, Railroad Street, doesn't have to be open all the way to Claremore. It could be closed further down to the west and used as a retention area if that's necessary to solve the problem for Albee. At any rate, I encourage the city to look into this to make sure you have budget funding included again this time for it and actually see that it gets done. They've been waiting for years for the city to take action on this. It's quite appalling, actually, as a former council member, to see the fact that we haven't been able to solve this. And every year, I'm sure the cost goes up. So I would certainly ask you to be sure that that gets reincorporated, that you look at it as a more macro project than for 2 property owners, because that is not what's really going on there. So think about that as you build your next sessions with regards to that. And like I said, I do encourage you to have those sessions and allow the public to come and speak. And it was stated that your constituents need to have input. You need a mechanism that allows people like myself and others across the city that are actually looking at this perhaps as closely as you are to have those dialogues with their council representatives or others of you on council so that we can air some of this stuff out, because the public doesn't get a whole lot of opportunity to actually speak at these meetings time-wise or to have interactive Q&A like you guys do. So it's really important that the city be transparent with the public and have the public have an opportunity for something similar to what you're getting to do with these projects. Some of them, I agree with Councilman Ganem, seem like a wish list or a pipe dream. There are plenty of things that the city needs to spend money on, and looking at some of the priorities that I've seen here, if those are those that are been designated, then obviously some of those need to be addressed as well. But thank you for the opportunity to address council tonight.
Is there anybody else from the public here to speak on this item? Okay. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Appreciate the time. And I would take a motion to adjourn the formal city council study session. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Before we open up the city council meeting, I'd like us to do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the city council regular meeting and call it to order. The time is 7:04. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the back wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call for the city council regular meeting.
Eight members are present, Mayor.
For my comments tonight, I would just like everybody, encourage everybody to participate or go to John C. Fremont Days. That's this weekend. We have opening ceremony starting Thursday night, hopefully with weather permitting. But a great list of events, and encourage you to be a part of that parade on Sunday. The board of directors, so many volunteers go into this event. It's a showcase event for Fremont. We bring a lot of people into town and the community. So, I encourage you all to be a part of it. I know our family will be, I have to judge a barbecue competition, tough job, right? But there's that there. We're going to be part of the Lego competition too and judge that. And, we got the car show, which is a big, always a huge deal. A lot of great people come in, a lot of great vehicles come into the community for that. So just want to encourage you to participate. It's going to be a great weekend. So, and thank all of those folks involved with putting it on. We'll move on to item 1 is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the July 8th, 2025 regular meeting. Councilman Sukrum.
I'll make that motion to adopt the current agenda for July 8th.
Councilwoman Ganem.
A second.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to public hearings, item 2 is resolution 2025-157 authorizing conditional use permit for a self-storage facility located at the southwest corner, West County Road South and Highway 77-275, Dodge County, Nebraska. I'll have staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for a self-storage facility. It is associated with the Knits Auction Company that is being constructed up on the south or northwest corner of 275 and 77 and North Broad Street. This is associated with a request for a landscape waiver. It will be on the next Planning Commission agenda on the 21st. If you look at the site plans in your packet, you will understand the need for a landscape waiver. This area is in the floodplain and it has to be elevated to remove it from the floodplain, but it also needs to accommodate stormwater retention. So on the very north end of the site is a drainage ditch. As you go around to the southeast and the south of the site will be 2 very large detention cells. And then on the very west side of the site will be drainage as well. So they'll be elevating the areas for the storage buildings. There'll be a center building where they have the auction place. They will put landscaping around the auction building, but there's just not a way to locate the currently required buffer yards on this particular site. So I wanted to be clear why they're requesting that. It just isn't possible to do that. In the draft of the UDC, there is proposed changes to the landscaping, which would remove the foundation landscaping requirements, as well as some of the buffer yard requirements. So as this moves forward, it would be fairly consistent with what has been proposed as it moves forward in the future. Otherwise, the self-storage units will be on paved surfaces. They'll be used for storage, rental, as well as for storage of auction materials. And then that main auction building will be the centerpiece of the facility. It meets the other requirements of the UDC, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilman Sukrum.
Just to make sure I understand, we're not granting them the landscaping waiver. It's still got to go to.
That still goes to Planning
Okay,
Commission.
I didn't see it here. That's why.
Right, yeah. Planning Commission grants the waiver. We're just a little off track on that. When they submitted the conditional use permit, they didn't realize they needed that waiver. So Planning Commission recommended the conditional use permit with the condition that that waiver be granted. I just wanted to be upfront with everybody so they understood what will be coming forward in the rationale.
Any other questions or comments from the council? I'll now open the public hearing. Anybody here from the public to speak on this? Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? Councilwoman Ganem.
Oh, come on, that's going to be huge out there, and I tried driving it. S Street, $57 to approve a conditional use permit for self-storage facility for the Nitz family.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 3 is resolution 2025-155 approving the Spence addition final plat. Staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for a final plat. It takes 3 tax lots and turns it into 2 regular lots. It may be a little difficult to see. I know some people didn't quite understand that there's a dashed red line that is that interior property line. Normally, this is something we could do administratively. However, they're dedicating right-of-way and easements, and under state statute, only the city council can accept those as part of the plat. So that's why it's in front of you. Staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff on this item? Now open the public hearing. See no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council? There are none, I'd take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem.
I move we accept resolution number 2025-155 that approves the request for the Spence addition final plat.
Okay, Councilman Jensen,
And I will second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilman Horner.
I would like to remove 9 and 13, please.
Any other items? Any items from the public to be removed? Okay, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda items 4 through 8, 10 through 12, 14 through 18. Councilman Horner.
So moved as stated by the mayor.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 9 is resolution 2025-160 authorizing the use of the David Cavich parking garage and SDL for the Fremont Area Chamber of Commerce on September 25th, 2025. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request from the Fremont Area Chamber of Commerce. They want to have a special event at the David Cavich parking garage on September 25th, 2025. With that, an outside SDL is required. So this just requires council approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any issue at all with this, this request, and I think we should approve it. You know, my reason for pulling it off, though, is that, you know, the Cavich garage, I just don't have a lot of faith that it's going to be ready by September. So, you know, I've already talked to the chamber, and I've asked them if they've got a plan B, and I told them, move your plan B to plan A, and then have plan B ready to go, and that's what you're working on. And then if we happen to get it done, then you can shift to back to plan A for Cavich. But can anybody from the city, I should have given you some warning, apologize for that, but can anybody from the city speak to whether or not we think we're going to have that ready by September?
Troy Shaven, city engineer.
So they've started work on the garage. The contract has 40 calendar days that they have to be done by, which would put them in the August timeframe. We had the same question at our staff meeting where we go over the agenda of whether or not we wanted to put something on the agenda for potentially, it might not be done. I mean, it is, I'd say it's going well right now, but you never know what you're gonna find when you start opening stuff up. And so that was a concern of ours, but right now it appears like they're gonna be done middle to end of August, and this was for the middle of September, and so it would give them an extra 3 weeks. I would be surprised if it wasn't done, but it's certainly not out of the question that they might find something and that a plan B would be needed. I believe we were gonna contact them and ask them. I did not make that call. If you want to comment on that.
Yes, I can speak to that. I did speak to the chamber and they would be willing to use Ilgen Fritz parking lot as an alternate location. So if we want to amend the resolution to add that as an alternate location, I think that'd be acceptable. We did put into the resolution that would be contingent, and that would be fine. We did put into the resolution that would be contingent upon completion to our satisfaction, city satisfaction of the parking garage's construction and repair. So.
And then I want to make some full transparency here. There's a little selfishness here. You know, I'm a beer tender every year. And, you know, I want to know where I'm going to be.
So they know that Ilgen Fritz is an option essentially, if we're not ready.
Yeah, I did speak to the chamber and they did say they were willing
Would
to
we
use
need
Ilgen
to
Fritz.
have a whole nother, vote if we had to move it, or would this take care of that, this vote?
I will a little bit defer to legal, but I assume we would have to amend the resolution to include
I think we
the
should.
alternate location language, just stating that an alternate, in the event that Cabbage is not ready to go, that the alternate location would be Ilgen Fritz parking lot.
I think we should make that amendment. Ilgen Fritz.
Ilgen Fritz.
Just to weigh in, to eliminate any ambiguity or question, do plan A and B in one resolution in this meeting and call it good.
All right, are there anybody from the public here to speak on this? Okay, well, we're back to council, so if you want to make that amendment.
I would like to make the amendment for the alternate location as,
Ilgen Fritz parking lot.
yeah, Clerk Chatter just said.
Okay. Councilwoman Lathrop,
I would second that.
okay. Please vote. This would be to amend the resolution to add Ilgen Fritz parking lot as the backup, in case Cabbage is not ready to go.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
I'd take a motion to the resolution as amended. Councilman Jensen.
I will make a motion on resolution 2025-160 as amended.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Second.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now, item 13 is a motion to receive the animal control report. Any report on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jody Sanders, City Administrator. Troy, you don't want to take this one? It is animal control.
You're good, Troy.
Forever Homes actually had this report for May on the Monday, I believe, after the last council meeting. So this is just kind of bringing them up to date on where they really should be in terms of the reporting that they provide us.
Councilman Horner.
My question is more one just in general, and Jody, you may not be able to answer this and that's okay, but I want to get the question out there. What I'm confused about each time we receive these reports, I have a hard time reconciling what each of these different reports mean and how they relate to each other. And I know everybody else struggles with that too. But as I look at this and I think about what the city's duties are, which is animal control, and I feel like I see in here a lot of animals that are becoming almost house pets that, and I don't know if the city's taking care of those. And so now we're also doing animal welfare. And I love animals. I've got 2 dogs. I love animals. I love cats and dogs and all that good stuff, but this is city dollars. And I guess my general question is, are we shifting from animal control to animal welfare? And does that still fit in with our ordinances and our rules and regulations involving this? Because if I look at the dates on some of these, it looks to me like, and I don't think this is the case, but it looks to me like one kitty has been there for over a year. And I just don't think that's the case, but maybe it is.
I can't speak to that particular animal. I will say that I do too share your concern to a certain extent, but we have a contract with Forever Homes to provide animal control services, meaning that they will house the animals that are collected by the CSOs or that are owner surrendered, and for a set amount each month. And so whether their census grows or not is not really the city's concern, because we're still only paying them the same amount, whether they have 100 animals or 500 animals. It's up to them to figure out how to get to welfare of 500 animals. We are simply asking them to shelter the animals that we have either a hold on or, have been picked up as stray.
So then my follow-on question would be is what would the budget, how do we know that budget that we're paying every month is for animal control then? The report is almost meaningless to me at that point because it's intermixed with animal welfare and animal control. How do we know that we're just paying for animal control?
That is a great question. The fact that we're simply just paying for the same amount every month is really the best that I can give you. They're not coming back and saying we need more money because we have more animals to care for. We're sticking with the contractual amount.
Well, I know,
that was agreed upon.
I know this is a sensitive issue and I don't mean, well, I'm not going to say what I was just about to say. I don't mean to belabor the issue. I was going to say beat a dead horse, but that wouldn't have been appropriate. I really don't mean to belabor the issue, but I'm concerned about this because we see it every month and we seem to have confusion around it every month. And maybe we're just going to have to live with that. And then we'll just have to vote on a consent agenda, not pull it off so we don't get confused. But I do wonder that. And I think I'm taking the hit here publicly for 7 other people, but I bet you there's 7 other people up here that wonder that too.
So I'm glad that you bring up that question because we're struggling with that same notion as we're looking at the building at the former Dodge County Humane Society building. What is it that we as a city need for, as you pointed out, animal control to shelter the animals that have been impounded, if you will, versus what is in the best interest of animal welfare, which is the business of Forever Homes. And when we enter into a contract with a nonprofit, with that being their specific purpose, we're going to have that issue. And I think other communities struggle with that as well, is how do we delineate between the two? Short of saying we're not going to outsource animal sheltering and we're going to do it ourselves. Yeah, exactly. The look that you'd see on our chief's face, I could tell. I didn't look at him, but I'll bet he made a face. That's it exactly. But most communities do continue on with some form of a nonprofit, whether it's a humane society or whatever in their community. They all seem to have their own names for them. But it is a question and an issue. But the contract, I think, kind of helps us from having to supplement when they have too many animals. Our price doesn't go up for them.
Gotcha. Maybe one simple solution, this is just a thought on my part that I've had before, I just never voiced it, but maybe you have a true animal control report and there's some guidance that says animal control is for 30 days and then that animal ages, whether they're still there or not, they age off of that report and they become an animal welfare. And they're not the city's problem anymore. And I hate to put it that way, but they're not the city responsibility anymore. And then we can then figure out a budget that's based on what's truly animal control. And my hat is off to Forever Homes for doing what they do. I mean, absolutely. But as a city council person, I've got to make sure that the money being spent is for what the city is supposed to be spending it for. And, you know, I can't let my personal feelings get in the way of that. So I do think that some more work is needed to be done on this. And I know we've got a couple of council members that are working diligently on that, and I applaud their work. And maybe think about something along those lines where we have a true animal control report that we can read and understand, and we know that that is what we're paying for.
I just want to weigh in real quick for you. I agree that I wish we could put a timeline. Unfortunately, these animals are considered a property, and therefore there's a whole bunch of due process that the police department has to go through. So I don't know that that time window is as available as we would like it to be. I'm not saying it's not an option, just be aware that there are certain due processes that are required to be followed, so that time frame may not always be as attainable as we want it to be.
Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, just to speak to that just a little bit, I know they're working on animal control ordinances, and Tara and we had conversations coming back from Norfolk about some of this stuff. You know, a lot of animal control problems are actually people control problems. And do we need to look at maybe doing something with our licenses, to where if you want to own a animal that has not been fixed, has not been spayed, has not been neutered, either feline or canine, maybe you should have to have a breeder's license, and maybe it should be really expensive. So that's the biggest thing is spay and neuter. That's for all of this. And I'm sure Martha and everybody at Forever would echo every bit of that.
Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, I don't want to drag this out, but I think one of the issues we've talked about, we've been frying some other fish with the animal control group, so we just haven't gotten to it. But I think the other thing you've got, I don't think anybody's worried about what's done with the funds, but you've got a mixing of public and private money in Forever Homes itself, and they simply don't have the accounting system to really be able to break that out. And personally, I think we should give some thought to sit as a city to maybe helping with that accounting system, and at least seeing what might be done to separate those two or make it clear, establish reports, that kind of thing. So don't know what that looks like, but it's a legitimate problem for Forever Homes too.
All right, good discussion. Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this? Okay, all right. If not, I'd take a motion to receive the animal control report. Councilman Horner?
So moved.
Councilman Jensen?
Second.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 19 is ordinance 5717, annexing property generally located south of Morningside Road and east of South Luther Road. This is final reading. We have had the first and second reading of this annexation. Is there any additional comments from council or staff on this? Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this item? If there's no other comments, I'd take a motion to hold final reading. Councilman Sukram?
Make a motion to hold third reading of ordinance 5717.
Councilman Horner?
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll have final reading.
Ordinance number 5717, an ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located south of Morningside Road and east of South Luther Road, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Final read.
Cast your final vote of ordinance 5717.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor. Ordinance number 5717 is approved.
Item 20 is ordinance 5718, annexing property located at Hills Farm, generally described as portion of tax lot 2 in the northeast quarter of section 35, township 17 north, range 8 east, and a portion of tax lot 3 located in the northwest corner of section 36, township 17 north, range 8 east of the 6 p.m. final reading. Again, this is the third reading of the annexation for the Hills Farm. Is there any additional questions from council to staff on this item? Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this? Seeing no other comments, I would take a motion to hold final reading of ordinance 5718. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
Second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Final reading.
Ordinance number 5718, ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally described as portion of tax lot 2 located in the northeast quarter of section 35, township 17 north, range 8 east, and a portion of tax lot 3 located in the northwest quarter of section 36, township 17 north, range 8 east of the 6 p.m. Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Final reading.
Cast your final vote for ordinance 5718.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor. Ordinance number 5718 is approved.
Now moving on to new business, item 21 is resolution 2025-161, authorizing the purchase of 4 hydrogen coolers for Unit 8 generator and awarding the bid to Industrial Heat Transfer, Inc. The amount of $144,828. Staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. These are the Unit 8 generator hydrogen coolers. The generator is filled with hydrogen and this cools the hydrogen while the generator is running. In the fall, we are planning on doing a generator rewind that was approved by council, and we put it off because of the Unit 8 or Unit 6 boiler failure. So during the last few weeks, we've encountered a couple hydrogen leaks or hydrogen cooler leaks, and these are about 15 years old. And so rather than try to put them in and into a new generator, we reached out to various vendors, put it out for open bids to get some new coolers ordered and try to get them here in the time frame that would match up with the generator rewind. And we went out for bid, and Industrial Heat Transfer was the low bidder. And we're requesting approval to go ahead and purchase those so we can have them here for the outage.
Questions for staff on this item? Any comments from the public on this? Any other questions from council? There are none. Take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2025-161.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Cast your votes, please.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 22 is resolution 2025-163, authorizing the purchase of a 2025 Ditch Witch HX30A trailer mounted hydro vacuum excavator, the natural gas department from Ditch Witch Underground, and the amount of $127,373.09. Troy Shaven will do our staff report.
Troy Shaven, Assistant General Manager Utilities. This is for the purchase of a hydrovac trailer from Ditch Witch. The hydrovac trailers are becoming more and more important when we do locates and when we do construction jobs. You used to dig down with a backhoe basically to the utility. Now what we're able to do is hydrovac or excavate with water in a vacuum so that we're not in any danger of grabbing fiber, grabbing water line, grabbing a gas line, anything like that. You basically shoot pressurized water into the ground. It turns the dirt into mud and it leaves a nice hole in the ground. So if you're looking for a pipe, you can basically look down and see it. We use that to excavate, and then we still do some backhoe work, but it's more and more going towards the hydrovacs. So this is for the gas department so that when they're locating and excavating, they can do that easier and have less of a chance to impact anything that's underground. I can answer any questions.
Councilman Horner.
One question, just out of curiosity about the device, is where does the material you're vacuuming go to and what's done with that?
It has a tank, and they take that to the treatment plant and dispose of it. It's like a big storage tank. They put in a big cell. I think it's 100-gallon cell on the back of this one. You've seen the big jet truck that drives around with the thing on the back and the hoses. This is the exact same thing. It's pulled on a trailer.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public on this? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Horner?
No comment for me. If there are no other comments from council, I was going to make a motion that we approve resolution 2025-163.
Councilwoman Ganem?
I would second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 23 is resolution 2025-164 for the purchase of a 2025 Ditch Witch JT21 directional drill, Ditch Witch underground for the natural gas department in the amount of $324,010.55. Go ahead, Troy.
For Shaman System German Energy Utilities, this is for a directional drill for the gas department. On May 13th, the council approved a smaller directional drill. I'll call that a backyard machine. We use that to bore gas lines in backyards and confined spaces, so we don't have to rip up people's gardens or knock their sheds down or fences or stuff like that. This machine is a little bigger. It allows us to go under, I'll say, major roads, maybe shoot 3 or 4 blocks at a time, avoid driveways, bigger jobs. The reason we're getting this one is because the boring is becoming a lot bigger part of what we do. And we typically would sub this out or hire somebody out to do this work, but it's becoming so busy that we're having problems with scheduling and the price is going up. I think typically to hire someone out to do a directional bore with a machine this size is in that $10,000 to $15,000 a day range. And that the schedule is the bigger part of it. A lot of times you can't get them to come in for a week or sometimes even a month. They're so busy. So we have people that are able to operate the machine. We think it's a better idea for schedule, save some money. So we're asking for approval for the purchase of this is the medium-sized machine. There is a larger machine that we'll probably never get into. That's more for the commercial guys that bore long stretches under highways and stuff like that. But I guess I can answer any questions.
Councilman Jensen.
Is this just something that just became available? I know it says the funds are available under the current capital budget, but I don't know if it's a budgeted item actually, or.
This is not a budgeted item. There was room in the capital, in the gas department. They did not use up their capital expenditure for this fiscal year. And so they had some room in it. It's something that we've been thinking about for a while. So there was room in the capital budget. So they decided to make the purchase now. But the particular item was not in the budget.
Any other questions of council? Any comments from the public on this item? If there's no additional comments, I'd take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
Make a motion on resolution 2025-164.
Councilman Jensen.
And I will second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 24 is resolution 2025-168, renewing the city's property and liability policy for a 1-year policy period in the total amount of $985,576. Swap staff report. Jen Knapp, Finance Director.
Jennifer Knapp, Finance Director. Mayor and City Council. This is our League Association of Risk Management Insurance renewal. We are recommending, staff is recommending that we again commit to a 3-year period. The cost of it is going up 34.8%, which is a good deal, and I will tell you why. It is going up to $985,000. If you will recall, we had storms last year. We have one deductible, not per building, but for the city, we paid $10,000 and they paid us $2.9 million to repair all of our buildings. The the league you'll see in the packet there, they have approved as a whole for Nebraska to increase the rates by 26%. On top of that, our valuations for all of our buildings went up, and it adds up. This is for our property insurance. This is also for our auto insurance, which includes the Department of Utilities insurance. This has our cyber in there. It's got our errors and omission, law enforcement liability, and they do just a heck of a job. And I know that when we were looking at this, there's other cities that were paying, deductibles for every single building. And so staff recommends that we say yes. We get the 5% discount. We commit to another 3 years, and we pay this with Lauren, and I'm available for any questions.
Councilman Jensen?
Do they always only do 1-year contracts? Is that normal or?
So we're doing a 3-year commitment. This is 1 year of payment, but within there, we can choose different levels. We could commit to 3 years. We could not extend and do another 3 years, and we could just finish out the 2 years we have left. We'd get less of a discount. You could just do 1 year. There's other options in the packet that you could choose, but this is where we make the most savings.
Any other questions from council? Any comments from the public on this? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Jensen?
I just to throw it to the public, $985,000 for a 1-year liability sounds like an awful lot, but there's an awful lot of liability within the city, and this is as good as it's going to get. And with no other further comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2025-168.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 25 is resolution 2025-171, authorizing the signature of a subaward agreement number 2025-150224837 with the Nebraska Department of Water, Energy, and Environment for the preventing outages and enhancing the resilience of the electrical grid grant program in the amount of $1,914,455. Angie, tell us about this exciting news.
And City Council. Yes, this is a great opportunity. I have to give a shout out to Nate Royick and Al Casper, who helped me put together a successful grant application for this $5 million project. The cap award was $2 million. We've been awarded $1.9 million. And the next step is signing the subaward agreement to get the project underway. It's relocation of transmission lines. There's 2 transmission lines that currently reside on the same poles. So when staff repair those lines, they have to shut off both lines in order to make the repairs. That's about the extent of my knowledge of it, but we've got Jeff Shanahan here if you have any DU questions about that. And, I know earlier tonight, we talked about the CIP, and this type of project and the success that we have with grants is a testament to the expert staff we have that put the CIP together. It does take them a lot of work, but they are experts in their field and do a great job. And it's grants like this that show that the federal government does not give you $2 million unless it's a really viable and important project. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Councilman Vaughn?
Perhaps not a question for you, but maybe for Jeff. These 2 lines, were they 2 of the 3 that were compromised during our recent spring blizzard that prevented us from starting back up our generation?
No, those lines were the interconnects to the outside world. These lines, however, were impacted because one of the sections was down between sub A and sub G. This particular line is from A to B and G to B. They both run down Luther Road.
Any other questions on this? Comments from the public? Congratulations, Angie and the staff, an amazing job. I mean, like you said, it's a team effort when you get a grant of this size. And the amount of data and information that goes into these grant requests it's a lot. It's a lot of time and effort.
I have to
So
thank Nate and Al for making it into information that I can understand, not being, on the utility side. But staff makes it really easy for me. They really do.
Councilman Sukram,
I was gonna make the motion if there's no more comment. I'll make a motion on resolution 2025-171.
Councilman Horner,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next is mayor item resolution 2025-172, authorizing unit 6 SH tube replacement at Londi Wright Power Plant, the amount of $141,454.09. This got added late. That's why I had to add it to the agenda. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. Yeah, this got added late. This was an item that was part of the boiler failure on Unit 6. Wasn't actually a direct result of it, but when we were doing the investigation of Unit 6, we discovered these tubes were, real thin and needed to be replaced. And you can only get to these areas once the scaffolding has been installed. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to get that done and get that work done as soon as possible. The reason we're bringing this to the city council is because we really haven't given you an update on where Unit 6 is. So this is the opportunity because it would have been part of the emergency declaration. We're fixing auxiliary equipment associated with it, but we wanted to pull this out just to let you know that some of these items are very expensive. A lot of them will not be included by insurance. Some of them will be included in insurance. Right now, we're in the process of getting 6 ready to come back online. We've compiled the database for all of the repairs. We've been working with the insurance company to try to at least let them know where we're at on the project. They've been out and done inspections. When this is finally completed, we're going to come back to you with the final costs. We're probably going to have it in a spreadsheet that would look like things covered by insurance, things denied by insurance, things fixed that were really found while we were doing the investigation. It wouldn't be responsible on our part to put that unit back online with these tubes so thin that we'd have another failure. So we went ahead and did the work, and we're requesting that you authorize the payment.
Questions for staff on this item? Any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? If none, I would take a motion. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2025-172.
Councilman Horner,
I will second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next is item 27, executive session to discuss contract and labor negotiations. You all have the language right here. I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen.
I move to go into executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Councilman Horner.
I second that motion.
A motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion from council? Pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Motion to go into executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to contract and labor negotiations. No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. Time is 7:49. We will now head to the back conference room. Executive Session, Councilman Jensen,
Motion to come out of executive session.
Councilman Vaughn,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Motion to adjourn. Councilman Suprin,
We'll make that motion to adjourn.
Councilman Horner,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. You all.
I left you Fremont days. I left all your guys' mail in front of your.
You know, I think I can handle that one.
So I didn't bring you food, but I brought your mail, which is.
Go over the burn ends first.